able to attend this
Okay.
morning.
All right.
But yeah, okay, I'll catch it later. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Bye-bye. Okay, that was a reminder that I'm recording. Sorry, that was one of my board members who was planning to attend and can't come. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
I get the Farmer's Almanac in my Instagram account.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the full moon is called the snow moon or something like that. It's
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's apparently, and I think the full moon might be today or was yesterday or something. But it has something to do with traditionally the full snow moon on the 27th. That would be today.
Yeah.
The heaviest snow usually falls during this month. Native tribes of the north and east most often called February's full moon the full snow moon. Some tribes also refer to this moon as the full hunger moon, since harsh weather conditions in the areas made hunting difficult. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, I know yesterday morning when it was so beautiful out, it was a little foggy here in the valley, but when I took the dog out for a walk at about 5, that moon was just gorgeous.
Yeah, Candy Barron's posted a gorgeous photo of it. She looks, she's at the end of North Douglas looking towards the Chilcats.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A great photographer.
That would be beautiful looking at the Chilcats. Oh, man. That'd be great. Yeah, I was getting some stuff at Super Bear yesterday morning on my way into work. And, I just turned and I looked out the window and you see the whole, all the peaks at the back of the valley there. And the guy who's the cashier just said, yeah, this is just, I'm a cashier and I get to look out at this.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
John and I have been trying to figure out where will we move if we retire? And then we have some either Winter King or a day like yesterday and think,
I think it's more, where could we have another place as a base camp?
Yeah.
That's what we think. Actually, we love the Whitehorse area. So.
Yeah, if only they would let us back.
Yeah.
It was always a little dry for my taste. I mean, I always enjoyed going up there, but it was a little dry.
Hi guys, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I can only stay 30 minutes.
Well, I'm recording. We will be recording this.
Oh, okay.
So you can get to it later on.
Cool.
Sue had something come up also, so she'll be, but I will try to post it as soon as it's finished.
It's done. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cooking class today.
Oh yeah. Is that the one Melanie is going to be in?
Yeah.
Cool.
Melanie, Morrison family, and John Brussel, the doctor from the Bone and Joint.
Cool.
Yeah. How many people signed up for the other one? Do you know?
Last time I looked, we had maybe 8, but we haven't really, we really haven't pushed it yet.
I signed up, and I'm excited.
Oh, did you sign up?
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm excited too.
And Melanie brought you the camera?
Yes, she did. I messed a little bit about with it, so I think I'm okay. But I'll text Laura.
Yeah, Laura can help, and Kathleen and Abel. can help.
Okay.
Hey, Justin and Gina.
Hey.
Hello.
I like your flannel, Nancy.
Thank you.
I'm getting tired.
You know,
Game recognized game.
yeah.
Can you make me a co-host or am I going to be able to share my screen anyway?
I don't know about that. So
Oh yeah, it looks like I can. Never mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as soon as we get everybody in here, I will post the PDF in the chat. Mhm. Good morning, Mariah. Good morning, Abel. Hey, Steve. We've got a whole bunch of people here today. Selena, hi. Good morning, Rochelle.
Good morning. I'm multitasking from my phone, and the Girl Scout cookies have arrived in Juneau, so my camera's gonna mostly be off.
You know, I don't think I ordered any Girl Scout cookies from anyone.
More Thin Mints.
I have two
Uh-oh.
scouts if anyone is in need. And I'm the troop leader, but I've never had to do the cookie part. We just don't have enough support with everyone so busy from COVID, so we're doing it all.
That's well, if you run out of people to sell cookies to, there's an empty hall at our house. Although I am leaving town on Tuesday.
Well, a box of Thin Mints is only good for about an hour anyway.
Oh, okay, I got it.
There's
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Sorry.
Good morning, Christina.
Morning. I was gonna say the Juneau, I'm on Juneau Community Concern. People are already asking about the Girl Scout cookies, so.
We're at AML right now doing the great sort and load.
Wow, that's good. Okay. How about, I have an idea. You get your shot, sell them outside where everyone's getting their shot, and you get a discount. Or when you give the cookies, you can give them a card about getting a shot.
There you go.
Do you know now if you help a senior get their COVID shot, you can get a shot too, even if you're not in the group that's qualifying to get a vaccine shot.
And the next pod is March 6th at Centennial Hall.
Right, but I'm saying if you help a senior to get their shot vaccine, they'll let you get your vaccine, even if you're not in the qualifying group.
Wow, that's great.
Quiet now.
Oh, I'm not sure how many more people to expect. There were like 30 on the list, but whether they all were serious or not, I don't know. Hey, Floralino, did you see the good news about the grant?
I did. I just saw it. Yay.
Yay. We
How
just
is
got a-
that?
I'll let Floralino explain.
Yeah, when you get
A grant just went through for Alaska State Council for the Arts to support Macbeth for Theater Alaska's production that's coming up in May. So,
which production of what?
Macbeth outside.
Oh, Macbeth. Okay, I love Macbeth. Yes. Okay.
So
Lots of blood in the middle. A big cauldron of blood. I saw one. There's a big cauldron of blood, and the actors kept dipping their hands in it.
yeah.
That's been real. That'll be popular. I'm looking forward to that.
Now we applied with Junior Arts and Humanities Council. Thank you, Nancy, so much.
Yeah.
And we're bringing it to the high schools as well. So we're real excited about that. Yeah.
That's all good. That's what we do. Well, I guess we could get started, or do you want to wait till 10:05?
We could probably give it another minute.
Everybody can gossip about things for a while.
I have a question, Flor Delino. You know that they did the Titus Andronicus reading. Do they have that recorded? Because they did it in the middle of the day, and I don't want to be listening to a play when I could be out in the sunshine or the snow. So I didn't catch it.
I don't know. I don't know if they did or not.
Yeah, 'cause that would
Probably
be.
not. I think there are people who were union on it, so they may not have recorded it. Yeah.
Oh, the union. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll write to Leslie. It's just.
Yeah, you should check
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, I know I have a link to watch something tonight, so you might give them a call.
I have a question. I have a question too. Is this, I think the email said this is our last session for the technically art?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah. And then after this, you're expected to go forth and do good things.
Oh dear. Well, I need money.
Okay, so we are recording this, and I'm going to post a PDF in the chat. I'm gonna mute myself, and
All right. I think we'll get going. So good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody again, and a couple of new faces, but many familiar ones. So for the new folks, my name is Lon Garrison. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Alaska School Boards, and I've been hosting this series of, I guess we call it technically art, pieces about board governance and how boards and staff work together. And this is our last presentation of this particular series. And I'm going to talk about strategic planning and annual goal setting. So one of the most important things a board and staff can work on to keep the organization focused on its mission, keep the board focused around what it needs to do, and help inform the staff about how it needs to go forth and implement the vision and the mission of the organization. So let's get into it. Let me share my screen here. And I did send Nancy a PDF that has, it's a handout. So it's got 3 slides per page and room for notes on it. So this is adapted from, of course, a presentation that we give frequently to school boards. So I've tried to cut out some of the school board references, but in essence, strategic planning and annual goal setting really is kind of ubiquitous across, any board organization, whether you're a for-profit board or a nonprofit board, a school board, any kind of an elected board. The idea is essentially the same, that a strategic plan helps set the direction for you to implement your mission. And then along with the strategic plan, the board needs to work on setting some annual goals, or we've now kind of termed it annual priorities, because sometimes within the strategic plan, there's going to be goals and objectives. But annually, what are the things that the board says that it definitely wants to work on, and those should be in alignment with your strategic plan. So when we think about strategic planning, it's really kind of very important to understand, kind of have the big picture. So, a strategic plan is something that, the team that's been pulled together to plan, and in this instance, maybe for a school district strategic plan, really are the architects of the plan. So for you folks, whoever your stakeholders are, and that team of stakeholders that are going to work on the strategic plan are the architects. And the board and the staff are really going to be the team that help put forth the effort to make that happen and kind of build the house. So they're going to be the constructors of it. So we really embrace an idea of a strategic plan being kind of a grassroots organic document that really comes out of a facilitation with your stakeholders, whoever they may be. And there's various different ways to do this. There's several facilitators and organizations that help do this. 4acre and maybe Rasmussen and other groups that help with strategic planning. And they probably all have a slightly different take on it. But for the most part, the idea is, well, what are we going to do in terms of putting together a plan so that the board and the administration are going to understand what needs to happen for the organization to move forward and serve the stakeholders that it's supposed to. So why plan? Well, you plan because you have certain outcomes, right? There's things that you want to get accomplished. There's a reason why you exist. And because of that reason, you need to try to get those things done. For instance, I'm a board member for Juneau Jazz and Classics. And what's our reason for existing? Well, it's to bring classical, jazz, blues music to Juneau with professional artists, and to provide that opportunity for the community of Juneau to experience that art, for us to provide educational opportunities for that art, and to bring that level of professionalism to the community that we don't always get. So those are some of the things that are part of our mission. So our outcome would be, trying to make sure that we're continuing to put those festivals on and those opportunities for Juneau and even Southeast Alaska to take advantage of that. Oops. All right, come on, you. So why plan? Well, let me make sure I didn't miss one. Okay, here we go. The board really is key to this, because the board is going to help facilitate this idea of a shared vision. And it's through the board's leadership that that's going to happen. So one of the key elements of developing a strategic plan is identifying, okay, where's the board going to be involved in this, and where's the administration going to be involved in this? And what kind of a leadership role will the board have in that? And then, if the board doesn't actually partake in the leadership, you have to be careful, because sometimes others will step in to fill that void, and they may not do what you had hoped would happen. So oftentimes leadership abhors a void, so to speak. And so others might inappropriately lead because the board isn't. And so you have to be careful of that. And so through the planning, you're going to try to avoid that particular situation. And without planning for outcomes, it's hard to know what the expectations might be. So that's a huge piece of doing the strategic plan, is really developing what these expectations are going to be for addressing outcomes. So strategic planning. Let's see, what is going to be my next move to figure out the next move, right? Okay, how does this process actually work? Well, the very first thing is, again, focusing on outcomes. What are you all about? What are the things that you need to get accomplished? And you may have specific projects or specific items as an organization that you really want to focus on in the near future. Your strategic plan doesn't have to be a plan that lasts for 20 years. Matter of fact, it should not be a plan that lasts that long. It should be a dynamic piece of work that continually gets updated. Most of the time when we work with school boards on their strategic plan, the maximum length of time that we say a plan should probably be in place is 5 years. Because what's going to happen is things are going to continually change. And just like in the arts world, the education world is continually changing. Do you think that things changed in 2020 with the pandemic? I am here to tell you that was a huge change. So people are looking at their strategic plan and going, okay, in education, how does my strategic plan now apply to a whole new paradigm, to a whole new way of having to educate kids? And surprisingly, having a strategic plan enables you to often deal with these kinds of things where you had no anticipation that something like a worldwide pandemic might happen. And it kind of keeps you true to what your purpose is. So if your strategic plan is developed around your mission and vision, you may have to adapt some things, and you may come up with some new outcomes, and you might have to change your strategic plan slightly. But if it's still focused on what your mission is, then you should really be in pretty good shape, and it will help guide you to those outcomes that you want to focus on. A strategic plan really provides you with a blueprint. It provides you with the opportunity to lay out in front of you, I'm at this point now, and I want to get to this point here. Here are the things that we think we need to do. And if we do these things, how can we tell we're there? So we'll get into the goal setting piece shortly, but it's really an opportunity to lay out in front of you some goals and objectives, and hopefully an opportunity to evaluate those goals and objectives so you see if you're actually making progress. Your strategic plan really should involve all stakeholders. So whoever is a part of your group, you really need to think about the constituency that you're serving and how are you going to involve them in helping to develop the strategic plan. You know, you need to have those voices at the table. And then finally, again, continue to focus all on your mission. So what is it that we're all about? What are we going to be doing? So, you know, for Perseverance Theater, what is your mission as a theater organization? How are we going to work on that and make sure that everybody understands what our mission is, and how are we going to plan to provide the outcomes that we see in order to make the mission come to reality? Now, this is set up for a school district, but I think it's a good kind of a good representation of what we think about in terms of how the strategic plan fits within the overall kind of planning structure and this idea about goals and how that falls out. So if you're looking at a school district, for instance, we say, well, there's a mission, vision, and belief. So this is the main umbrella that covers the organization, covers the school district. And within that, to support that mission, vision, and those beliefs, we developed a strategic plan. And in order to implement the strategic plan, the school board is going to come up with some district goals each year to help make that come to be. The superintendent is going to work through those goals, and they may come up with goals for the administration in order to make that happen. The school board is going to continually evaluate the progress of the strategic plan and their leadership involvement in its implementation through a board self-improvement plan. So the boards go through a self-evaluation. The superintendent will also go through their evaluation process. And we talked about this the last time about how important it is to have an evaluation process that ties back into your strategic plan and the performance of getting that implemented. And then everybody else kind of falls out below that. So principals in school buildings should have goals that align to the plan. Classroom teachers should also have goals. And then ultimately, even students should have goals within this plan. And everything funnels up and is covered by the umbrella of the strategic plan, the mission, and the vision. So that's just a representation of what we see in a school system. So what are the steps when it comes to developing the plan? Okay. And so this is we use a technique that we've developed over the years that works well with school districts. And I think overall, it's a very good template or a framework for strategic planning, and it really can work for just about any organization. It's really based on the strategic planning work that the Institute for Cultural Affairs has developed over the last 50 years or so. ICA runs a program called the Technology of Participation. And if anybody's ever interested in facilitation, that is a wonderful thing to go to. So ICA and the Technology of Participation. And they talk about facilitation, and they also do a lot with strategic planning. So our strategic planning model is really kind of built on that foundation. But the strategic planning process has a lot of different pieces to it, and it's a bit of a cycle, okay? And you can see from this particular picture that in the process, there's going to be action-oriented thinking, okay? There's going to be what's the vision? You may need to do an environmental scan. So, you know, when you're beginning the process, what do things look like? And then at the end, what do things look like after you've gone through the process? You need to have a vision, the what ifs. Think about contradictional thinking. So, okay, if these things don't work, why not? Why wouldn't they work? So kind of go through that process. Underline, then also finally developing kind of this idea of strategic direction, and then focused implementation. And then you start all over again. So, you know, every 3 to 5 years, you should go through that process. And that's what we advocate. Another, just a bigger picture of that. So our strategic planning cycle goes like this, okay? In the very center, everything is centered around the mission, as I've spoken about, okay? So the very first thing we want to develop are some goals. Where do we want to go? So what are the things that the organization is all about? So as a board, you might have some ideas, but you might be surprised if you try and get some information about the folks who you work with, who are your stakeholders, who are your audience. So what goals might they say they have for your organization? From there, from using the goals, we take a look at, well, what are the desired outcomes? So what are the things that the organization is going to need to do to create satisfaction on the part of your stakeholders? From there, develop strategies. So how do you get there? You know, if these are the desired outcomes, what are we going to use as a strategy to get those outcomes to be a reality? And as we work through that, one of the most important things to realize is how are we going to measure how well you're doing in attaining those desired outcomes? So utilizing the strategies, measuring those, and saying, well, okay, if we take a look at the results, have we actually attained the desired outcome that we wanted to do? So how well did we do? And then once you have information about the outcomes, it feeds back into the process again. You know, are there things that we still need to improve upon? Or did we complete that part of the strategic plan and now we can move to another one? And it just continues to go through that cycle. It's really a pretty simple cycle. And again, it just continues to evolve. So every year, or, you know, actually every year, you should look at this in some way, shape, or form. That can be done through a board self-evaluation and the evaluation of your executive director or administrator. Those are opportunities to do it. And then there may be other opportunities throughout the year, depending on your plan, for events that you actually hold. The board of directors for the Association of Alaska School Boards goes through this process every 3 years. We just build it into our meeting schedule. And we spend an entire day and sometimes 2 days every year evaluating our strategic plan. This year, because this is going to be the year that we're going to do that, you know, while we often staff-wise have facilitated this in the past, this year I'm going to do something a little different. I have asked another facilitator from another state school boards association. We're actually going to swap some services, so it won't cost us anything other than travel. But we're going to have a facilitator from Idaho come up and spend a few days with us this summer, just to get a different flavor of a different person who's not directly connected with our organization. So we have that opportunity to get some facilitation that's outside of what we normally know, you know, and I think that brings kind of a fresh perspective to it. And I can't stress enough how when you go through this strategic planning piece, having a facilitator to help guide your boards and your organizations through this, I think, is just critically important. It's so hard to do it by yourself because, frankly, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. You get so into it, it really becomes difficult. And having somebody that can be there and pull those voices, to the table and make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate is really super important. One of the key elements when we do strategic planning is at the very beginning, taking a look at the organization and how people feel about that, and do what many of you probably know as a SWOT analysis. So everybody participates in this and takes a look at, what are the strengths of the organization or the board? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats? So as you get away from the upper left-hand corner, you're getting towards an area where you're going to be less effective. You either have weaknesses or you're going to get in the lower right-hand corner, you might have threats to the organization, okay? So this SWOT analysis is really important to go through, and it can give you some idea about, okay, well, these are the things that we might want to focus on, and what are going to be some strategies and some goals, and ultimately the outcomes that we want to see to improve where the board and the organization is in this regard. So strategic and annual planning provides these things, and we say planning is not optional, and I can't stress that enough. At Juneau Jazz and Classics, we're thinking about the same exact thing. It's been way too long since we've had a strategic plan. We've got a new artistic director, and he has a wonderful plan, and that plan is beginning to really take shape. But as a board, we need to get together and go through this strategic plan and think about, okay, what are we going to do as things evolve, so that together we all have this same idea, this vision. We understand what the outcomes are going to be. Strategic planning really will help provide a continuity for the board and the staff. Boards change, over time. Boards change. You get 1 or 2 new members on a board, and it's a new board. You get new staff members. If you get a new executive director, the relationships change. But one of the most constant things can be your strategic plan. And that's the piece that can continue to bring people together, set those expectations, and you don't necessarily get off track then. A strategic plan provides an opportunity for measuring your progress. It provides an opportunity of accountability for the board, and then for all the constituents that you serve. And it provides that accountability to the staff. So these are critically important pieces that a plan will help you with. And then finally, it really does lead to organizational success. So those elements of a strategic plan help continue to focus on your mission and the implementation of that mission. So organizational success, while not guaranteed, is much more likely if you go through strategic and annual planning. So part of what I said before was that we really think this is an organic exercise, and that this participation needs to include not just the board and not just the staff, but all those who might be involved in your organization, and to try to get that idea of greater buy-in in what you're doing, so that you all have shared expectations. You end up with a high level of support. You get a consistency and a continuity about your organization. And again, that idea of accountability. So how is this going to work? Oops, hang on one second. This is just an example of when we do a strategic plan with a school district about the flow of our work. So when we come into a district to begin working, It's not just the school board that we're working with. Matter of fact, we usually say we only want 1 or 2 school board members as a participant in the overall process. Usually the superintendent's going to be there, and then there's going to be teachers, there's going to be some classified personnel and whatnot. But we go through an introduction and an overview of how this is going to work. The superintendent might give some sort of a report on, well, this is the plan that we had, this is where we're at, review what that current plan is, and then review the vision, mission, and beliefs of the district. So this very same thing could happen for your organization. Great place to start. And then we begin working on things like the internal analysis, that SWOT analysis that I spoke about. Okay, inside the organization, what do people see as their strengths and whatnot? So even from folks outside looking into your organization, what do they see when we look internally at the organization? And then from the organization's perspective, when we look out, what do we see? So kind of flipping that around. So board members and others, as you look out, what do you see in terms of, how has the public reacted to what you're doing? What are the things, the criticisms that you might be getting? What are the things that you want to make sure that you address? And then you develop these critical issues. So how do these critical issues really center on what your mission is? What are the things from the mission that address the critical issues? If those two don't line up, then you need to assess whether or not that critical issue is something that your organization should be doing. Once you get through the critical issues, then we begin talking about, well, if you had aspirations for this, what would you aspire to make this work? And then finally, we get into the pieces where we start talking about kind of the nuts and bolts of the strategic plan. What are going to be the goals? What are the desired outcomes? And how do we develop some objectives to see those goals and outcomes eventually come to be? What are the strategies then that we're going to use to make the plan work? One of the things we really subscribe to is what we call SMART goals. Hopefully many of you have maybe heard of these. So a SMART goal means it's a goal that's specific, okay? It needs to be specific about what you're trying to do and the outcome you're trying to obtain. It needs to be measurable. Now, sometimes that can be pretty tough. So that means, that your goals shouldn't be such pie in the sky that there's no way you could potentially measure that. Well, what we want is a specific goal that will allow you to measure its progress, your progress towards obtaining the goal in some way, shape, or form. And then, is the goal attainable? It's one thing to have a goal for an organization that's kind of way out there. It's a real ideal. But if you're trying to get somewhere and be accountable for it and be able to show progress, you need to develop goals that really have a chance of being attainable. Is it relevant? Does it do and address the things that you are all about? And you'd be surprised how sometimes groups will come up with goals, and gosh, those goals sound great, but they may not have really a lot to do with the organization. It might be, oh, well, that's what somebody wants to do because they think that's pretty cool. And this is an opportunity to do that. But what we want to do is, again, bring it back to what's your mission and vision. And then finally, time-based. Set some time frames around this. How are you going to do this? What is the time in which you're going to try to get this done, and then report back, to the board and to your constituents? So set a time frame for that. It will provide some discipline for the board and the administration on, we need to be making progress. And it doesn't mean that you can't reset the clock and say, okay, we need to continue. This is a goal that's extremely important. We've made some progress, but we didn't get where we wanted to go. So we're going to reset. And the end result, So a foundation for any administration's annual performance evaluation should be this idea of linking back to how did we do with the strategic plan and the annual goals? What is the performance that happened, and did we obtain those things? And it provides that direct link between, me as the executive director for the Association of Alaska School Boards. We have a long-range plan. One of my primary responsibilities is to continually evaluate what we're doing with our long-range plan. We have 5 goals, and some of them are pretty complex, but our 5 goals, I need to be continually evaluating those and saying, are we doing those things? Is the organization supporting the work to make sure that those goals are being implemented? But just as important is it's a foundation for the board to evaluate itself on its leadership role in making sure that the strategic plan is being evaluated, is being implemented. And I really can't stress this enough. I think a lot of boards miss this piece, that they think, oh, well, we've gone through the strategic plan, we've adopted the plan, and then we just give it to our staff and then they do it. No. A board and an executive director or administrator have shared leadership responsibilities. And the board ultimately has a real responsibility to make sure that, through their oversight and their leadership, that they continue to move forward with implementation of a strategic plan. And it goes back to that idea of accountability. And did we get to the outcome that we had hoped to get to? And if not, what are we going to do about it? Because you're going to run into failure. You're going to run into difficulties and challenges. I mean, who would have thought, that for a whole year, schools, for the most part, would have to go to a virtual learning environment. Not every community had to, but most communities, most schools did. That was a whole different paradigm that was shoved on us with no, we had no expectation that would happen. And all of a sudden it did happen. So what happens now that we're where we're at, and how does our strategic plan enable us to respond to that new paradigm? So the end result, again, enables all of these players and all of these pieces to work together. And one of the offshoots of that can be extremely beneficial is, how can that inform professional development for the staff that your organization may employ, or the volunteers that you may use? Because maybe you don't have staff. Maybe you're kind of doing it all. You're a small organization, but you depend on volunteers. And it's equally as important if you have volunteers to be a part of this, and that will help give them direction as well. So plan, learn, do, assess, start all over again. And that professional development cycle, whether you're volunteer or paid staff, is critically important. And again, as I mentioned, the board continues to develop and show leadership by helping to implement the plan, and demonstrates that by continually coming back to any of your constituency, any of your stakeholders. So for a school board, every school board meeting, any opportunity they have to work through that, bring up the strategic plan. One of the most critical points for a school board is during the budget season, right? School boards in Alaska don't have the ability to raise revenue on their own. They depend on the state of Alaska and local governments, if they're in an organized area, to provide all the funds to be able to execute education for the students of those communities. So it's critically important for them to continually communicate, our strategic plan says we're going to do this, and these are the things that we've done. Here's the leadership that we've taken, and we've expressed to our superintendent and the staff, this is where we want to go. So that's really important to understand how much a board's leadership can really impact whether or not the plan is going to be implemented. what are the differences between strategic planning, which can be for several years, and then annual goals? Because they're both extremely important. And really, you really can't do one without the other. So strategic planning, I talked about, you may gather information before you actually get into the planning sessions, okay? So you can use some data that may exist, or you may put surveys out there to try to get some feedback. Generally, when we do strategic planning, maybe the first day or 2 days, we often do it for a couple of days in the planning session, is that feedback from the community, okay, from all the stakeholders, getting that information. So you have this database of information that when you get into actually putting the plan together, you'll have some things that you can turn to. And then there's the action plan piece, which is where you're going to actually develop, what goes into the plan, those outcomes and those expectations. So annual planning is the piece where the board and your administrator, your executive director, under the guidance of the strategic plan, decide, these are the things that we want to focus on in the coming year. We want to try to get some of these things, and they may come directly from the strategic plan, but it should align to it, and they may not be as grand, they may not be as big a goal, but they may be part of it. So for instance, I did a board workshop with a board, and these were the board priorities for the school year of 2017-18. The board said, they desire to develop a sustainable environment to positively impact critical decision making. Oh, well, that's kind of interesting. So what does that mean? Obviously, they were having some difficulty with that, and they wanted to improve the opportunity for both the board and the superintendent and administration to really think about things in a positive way for critical decision making. They were interested in thinking skills, which enhance student desire and confidence. So these are some things related to their strategic plan. You want to create a culture of accountability. We talked about board self-evaluation. So if people see the board evaluating themselves on this progress, it sets up this idea, they're behaving in a way that holds themselves accountable, using an annual board goal setting process. So if you as a board have an opportunity to get together and say, we're going to set 3 goals for our board to try to focus on getting done in the coming year, and those align to our strategic plan in this way. So annual goal setting. And then in this case, this was for a superintendent, but it could be your executive director or your general manager, whoever it might be, but using those goals to help create a performance-based evaluation system. And then using data to inform your decision-making. What did we do? What kind of data can we get to help us understand, did we get there or not? So this idea of culture, creating this culture that this is what we do. We just expect that. Everybody has a behavior that feeds into this idea of this culture of accountability. And a guy that I worked with a few years ago and I listened to, he came and spoke to us. One of the things that I really liked that he said was this idea around, creating a culture which is based on behaviors, and behaviors reinforce culture. And you can do all the strategic planning that you want, but if you don't have a culture to support your strategic plan, it's not going to happen. So his little saying was, culture eats strategy for lunch. In other words, you could go through all this work, and if you don't create this culture of accountability, this culture of actually doing the work, the strategic plan won't get done. You won't get anywhere with it. So this is the important part for the implementation. So when we look at the whole picture, stepping back at the whole picture, here's our Alaskanized graphic of strategic planning. At the very top, we have, the bush plane flying over, trailing the mission, okay? And then we have aspirations underneath that. Okay, this is what we want to do. This is what we aspire to do to make sure the vision and the mission are implemented. And then we have the goals, and the goals are the tops of the mountains and the objectives beneath that. So we have to go up the objectives to get to the goals. And below that, the strategies, and then we have beliefs and activities. So we just tried to create an Alaskanized version of how you might think about this in a graphical way. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and just ask if anybody has any questions. I'll stop the sharing. Has anybody gone through strategic planning?
Yes, I have several times, but it's a good refresher always.
Okay, good.
We're in the middle of it and matching the strategic plan to the budget at this time.
Okay. So let me ask this question, Paulette. Are you matching the strategic plan to the budget or the budget to the strategic plan?
The budget to the strategic plan.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. If you do it the other way around, what happens is you automatically become limited, right? Because the budget is never what you want it to be, or almost never. So really the strategic plan helps you understand, okay, well, I've got a budget and this is what I have to focus on. Anybody else that's been involved or is currently involved in strategic planning?
Catherine has a question about the board training part, if you have time for that at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned board going through a self-evaluation, and I was wondering if you just had some kind of nuts and bolts pointers about, okay, it's once a year and this is what we do, or just how that would go.
Yeah, sure. And that's
Thanks.
absolutely. And that's really an important piece to, again, help everybody stay accountable to what you're supposed to be doing. So with school boards, we work with school boards and we have a series of board self-evaluations that we help facilitate. And I can't stress enough, again, that having a facilitator when you do a self-evaluation can be a super powerful tool, because what happens is it allows everybody, it allows for a space for conversation that you may not normally have when you try to implement an evaluation on your own. I'm not saying that you can't do it on your own, and that's probably better than nothing. But to bring somebody in to actually kind of facilitate that conversation can be a powerful way to be able to have conversations that you might not otherwise have. And we have a series of questions that we go through. Basically, we have a board self-evaluation tool that we've developed, and it asks the board members questions about how they feel the board is performing. And it's not really, we do have one that asks questions about how you as a board member are doing, but the evaluation that we work with most of the time is really focused on evaluating the board as an entity and how it works. So, some of that is, does the board understand its policies? How does the board work with its executive director or administrator? How does the board work with its constituents? What does the board do in that regard? How does the board do when it comes to actually having a meeting? Do you get your work done? Is there frustration at the meeting? Because it seems like we come to a meeting and we have some things on there and we don't really get what we want done. So this is a great opportunity to talk about those things. Do board members communicate effectively with each other? Is there good communication between, the executive director and the board? Those kinds of things. And it's all about, as a board, are you working well together, or where are the areas that you might want to improve? And then from that, developing a board self-improvement plan. Okay, the board's gonna do some training. Okay, because we need to do something about, you know, how we run a meeting. We need some Robert's Rules of Order training, or something like that. We need some training about understanding our policies. Well, when's the last time the board actually read through the board bylaws? So all of these kinds of things is, they're great things to do, and do every year, especially if you get new board members every year. But it's the one time where the board can get together and actually have a conversation between each of the board members and gain a better understanding about how you work together.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? So I think Nancy mentioned that that Juneau Arts is getting ready to undergo strategic planning. Is that right, Nancy?
That's correct.
Great.
Next week and the week after, we'll be working with Lori from 4Acre.
Nice. That's great. And how about any other groups? Do we have other groups here that are, I know Paulette said she was working on aligning the budget to the strategic plan. How about your group, Chris?
We're pretty casual and we've never had a plan. But shortly after we started this course, I got thinking about it and I suggested to the board that we just do a plan. I don't know if you'd call it a strategic plan, but just a COVID plan, because we've really been so impacted, and we need to think about where we're headed. So we're doing a mini plan that doesn't have a long time frame. But my hope is we can launch from that into a 5-year plan.
Great. Yeah, you know, baby steps, right? And I think you can, every time you do it, you might learn a little something new, okay? And so you can build on that. You can build on both the successes and the challenges, right? Oh, well, that didn't quite go as we had thought. What do we need to do to adjust the plan so that we all have a greater understanding of where we need to go? So good on you guys. Yeah, I mean, even the smallest organization having some sort of a plan. Well, what's, you know, thinking about, well, why do we exist? And what are we supposed to be doing? What is the outcome for which we exist? And how are we going to get there? How are we going to make sure that happens? Anybody else? Was there anything surprising to you about the strategic planning approach? Do you guys need more coffee?
Well, I can just clarify in that this effort with the JAC will be my first time planning at a board level. It's always been departmental or programmatic, and there has definitely been, budgetary or political constraints or other constraints that haven't made that attainable piece possible always. And or the evaluation, the implementation and evaluation piece. So I'm excited to see the whole process from a different level now, I guess, is what I'll share.
Great. And that's a good point, because many of us are staff somewhere, right? Whether we're working for a profit or a nonprofit organization. And so, when you get put in the board seat, it's a very different perspective. And all of a sudden you have to think about it in a different paradigm, because, oh, now I'm at the board table and I have to work with these other people to figure out where we're going to go. And I don't necessarily have somebody other than our constituents telling us what needs to happen. So, good point. All right, I'm just going to share my screen real quick and just show you some examples of what our strategic plans end up looking like. And the ultimate plan is pretty darn simple. It doesn't need to be in a 3-ring binder that has 250 pages in it and has all this detail, and it's really something that nobody ever goes back to. Now, an administrator might take it and say, okay, I'm going to drill down into this, and here's my plan for implementing the strategic plan. And that might have a lot more detail in it, but that's not necessarily for everybody to understand. That's on the staff part. So if we look at what we've done for some school districts, so my my team member at AASB, Timmy Tullis, does most of the strategic plan. So in 2018, she worked with the Petersburg School District. So here's what they put together for Petersburg. And it's just a pretty simple document, right? That goes down and that goes and provides this kind of condensed information so everybody can understand this is the strategic plan. Now, these aren't all the details that the superintendent is going to use to get the plan implemented. This is the big picture. This is the board piece, okay? And this is the piece that the public may look at and the staff may look at to some degree. So their vision, what does success look like? For in Petersburg, their vision is inspiring our students to become responsible, healthy citizens, positively contributing to our global community. Well, then what's their purpose, the mission? So Petersburg schools will advocate for continuous growth and promote a healthy environment and provide diverse educational opportunities where all students achieve, and then their beliefs. So these were all things that they worked with the community on. That came from the community. That didn't just come from the board. But then what are the goals? Well, working with the board and the community, here were the goals for the strategic plan that goes from 2018 to 2021. The school district will have a continuous growth in all student subgroups. So all the different demographics of students that make up the Petersburg schools. All students will graduate prepared for a future, whatever that future may be. Petersburg School District, in partnership with families and other stakeholders, will expand student learning and community involvement for greater global citizenship. And then finally, our school community will feel safe and valued in our schools. And so for each one of these different goals, there's opportunities to measure those and see how well you're doing. And that might happen through a number of different objectives and kind of sub goals, okay? So that's what Petersburg did. This is the Kashunamute School District out in Western Alaska. It's basically where the Kuskokwim River flows into the Bering Sea. So the little village of Chivak. So they went through the same exact process. So this is a school of basically about 220 students. All students would feel safe and supported in a positive school and climate. So again, they went through all these different pieces, and it's just portrayed in this 2-page document. Pretty simple. Doesn't have to be tremendously complicated. And then finally, this is a charter school on the Kenai, Kaleidoscope School of Arts and Science. So it's not a school district. This is an actual public charter school in Soldotna. They did the same thing, and so what is it about the charter school? What do they focus on? Goals and objectives. They need to enhance volunteer opportunities, develop and define academic policy committee, which is their governing board, the roles and responsibilities and its relationship to properly govern the organization. So they took a little different route. They had a few things that were a little bit more about trying to help them become a better organization. And ultimately, help them implement their vision and their mission. And so that was what they did for a charter school. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you have found that helpful. And again, you have the PDF of this. And if anybody has any questions, you're more than happy to, I'm more than happy to take your questions and emails. I really can't stress how important strategic planning and goal setting is. It really does lead to better leadership and better governance of your organizations. And it keeps people on the same, kind of in the same page, and it creates that culture that allows you to utilize the strategy. So any final questions or comments, thoughts?
I have one for Nancy. One of the things you said that's kind of scary to me is that it's critical to have a facilitator. And actually, I just don't think the board would approve that expenditure. But Nancy, as I understand it, with Foraker, to get their help, you have to pay a certain annual fee. Is that right?
No, that used to be the case. Now you just pay a higher price for them. I would say that other times we've used people in the community who know a bit about, like Here's Lawn, for example, or, somebody who used to be a board member, maybe not that, it's not necessary really, especially as you're just starting out, but it is important, I think, to have somebody who's not part of the conversation, because it's like being a secretary or something. You're sitting there writing things down or trying to direct traffic, but you don't get to say your own things. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's important to have somebody from the out. Catherine's got a thought too.
Just a suggestion, Chris, I don't know what organization you're with. I want to say that you're with the yoga studio. Is that not, you are? You might offer, as payment, you might offer a punch card of 10 classes, for example. When I was on the symphony board, I seem to recall that we gave season tickets to the person who facilitated our annual meeting. So the expense was not a cash outlay. So you might just consider that.
Yeah, and oftentimes Nancy's right on that. The big piece is just having somebody who's kind of they don't have, they're not directly a part of your organization. So everybody can come to the table and they don't have that same hat that everybody else is wearing. And it just provides a great opportunity for the board to have a more rich conversation, because that person hopefully can draw out those voices, and that's really important. And I think there's folks, certainly I'm willing to talk to folks about, just helping and donating, that if that's the case, or whatever it might be. And I think there's other experienced folks in the community, especially very, very small organizations that just don't have the capacity, to pay for full-time, for a professional facilitator. And that's not what you always need. So
this would be the correct moment for me to note that Lon has donated his time for all 6 of these pieces. So whatever you can do for Lon would be much appreciated.
Oh, I just really believe in it. So I'm happy to donate it. And of course, I'm a big supporter of the arts, and always have been. And so, yeah, it's my pleasure to do it.
It's been really helpful, and it really helped us get through the needing to shift from real things to virtual things. So.
Yeah, kind of filled that void, unfortunately, a little bit, didn't it?
Yes.
But I don't know about you guys, but at Juneau Jazz and Classics, we're getting real excited about the potentiality of getting back to some in-person things. Of course, it's probably going to be a mixture of both for a little while, but we're getting pretty excited about that possibility. So
I just want to say that I found these classes to be super, super helpful. If you, Nancy, were to organize something like this through the winter next winter, I would probably find myself participating again. I keep thinking of my brother in Pennsylvania who just got onto the board of directors of a summer camp associated with the church. And I've been feeding him little tidbits, and I'm really thinking that there's very broad appeal to this class. But the other thing I want to say, ironically, is that I think, for me personally, I'm more likely to participate via Zoom. If I had to get in my car this morning and go out in the snow and drive to the Jack, you know, for this, it's just I'm in the living room on the computer and I find it super easy. So I would encourage you to think about that going forward in terms of getting more participation. Just keep on Zooming.
Well, we do have these mostly all posted on YouTube. I forgot to record a couple of them, but there is a YouTube link that you can share with people. We are planning to do this again next year, but it will probably focus on artists and artist needs. You know, we've just, you know, how to write contracts, how to protect your copyrights, how to, you know, stuff, the business of being an artist that sometimes artists would prefer to ignore. So, because they're artists and not business people. But anyway, that's our focus, what I'm hoping to pull together for next year, because I agree. I think just being able to roll in and take a little class with a cup of coffee in my hand is pretty handy, actually. So
well, and you know, now we're all used to it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've become accustomed to meeting via Zoom. It doesn't feel that uncomfortable anymore. I mean, sometimes it's a little tricky if you're having difficulty with your internet, and but here in Juneau, for the most part, you know, when you're here in Juneau, it works pretty well. There's certainly when you have to deal with, you know, we've got school board members that we deal with in some of the small western and northern villages, and even here in Southeast, that have very limited bandwidth. So it's pretty hard for them to zoom in on things at times. But overall, I think we're just so much more comfortable with that, and we communicate better with it now. I don't know about you, but I'm so much more adept at, you know, scanning the screen and watching people's expressions. And, you know, so you just begin to kind of pick up on those cues that normally you would do automatically in an in-person environment. So I'm with you. I think doing this over the next winter would be great. And, you know, I'd be interested in the contracts and, you know, all those kinds of things, because that's really important to understand. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been wonderful. I really thank you, everybody, for participating. And again, if you have any questions, you can contact me. I'd be happy to take your email or phone call anytime and give you any help I might be able to. So,
thank you very much, Lon. Everybody go out and have a nice, safe, don't be in the avalanche zone day.
yeah.
Thank you, Lon.
That's right.
Thank
All right.
you.
Take
Go
care. Have a
Steve.
wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Excellent job. Gonna teach.
Bring us some cookies, Mariah.
Ah.